so we are going to start with our lightest pencil. What's our lightest pencil? 4H. Good. All right, so remember with 4H, we are holding the pencil way back at the end. We are using the edge of the pencil instead of the very tip. And we're going to start lightest and go darkest. So you're barely even touching the page. You're not going to see a big difference with 4H from light to dark because you're not able to put a lot of pressure on there.
Can you upgrade your screen?
That would be helpful. Thank you. All right, so don't want to see much at all over here. As I move across, I'm going to put a little bit more pressure yeah, we're going all the way across. We have to layer.
Oh, we're layering.
Layering. Very important aspect of blending and rendering is layers and layers. Now, like I said, you're not going to see a big difference from light to dark with just the 4H. That's okay. But just remember, you don't want to press very hard. You don't want to use the tip of the pencil with a 4H or a 2H for that matter. It's not intended to be dark. So if you're unsure about yours, look up at mine. Not much change. Light. Light, light, light. Solid coverage. So using those pencils, those really light ones, hold it way back here so that you're using like the edge of the pencil, not the tip. Okay? Then you're able to actually fill more space a lot more quickly. See how much more you got there? So hold it so you're using the edge of it. See? Again, there should not be much change. Nope, you're good. Very, very little change. After I'm done with 4H, what's the next one I'm going to use? I'm going to go a little bit darker. 2H. All right, so here's the thing with rendering is you kind of got to plan stuff out just a little bit. I don't want to make where it's lightest any darker, okay? So I am not going to start on the very end with my 2H. I'm probably going to start with my 2H right around here, okay? But I don't want it to happen all of a sudden, all right? So as light of pressure as I possibly can right there. Then as I move along, I will press a little bit harder so it starts getting a little bit darker. Okay, I don't want to see a big jump right there. The goal of rendering, like I said, we want to make sure it's a nice smooth transition from light to dark. Again, 2H, not meant to be dark. We're creating all of these layers. one, our first kind of mid-tone. If you remember yesterday, HB is kind of where that graphite starts getting a little bit softer. A lot more will come off on your paper. Again, I don't want to start. I don't want to make this part any lighter over here. I'm going to start down a ways. I'll put the mark where I'm going to start with my HB somewhere in there. But again, gradual change. Very, very light pressure to begin with. And as I move across, I'm going to start pressing down a little bit harder. You're not going to get a gradual change unless we do all these layers. Seems tedious, and it is tedious, but it's the most realistic way to shade, especially if you're doing still life, but metallic textures, skin textures, fabric. This is usually the one you're going to use, is rendering. You don't have to, but this is just so I can show you guys. All right. What's going to be next? 2B. 2B, that is correct. So, this one is going to start probably about halfway through for me. Now, these are going to be darker, so very, very light pressure to start with. Remember, with my 2B, I kind of start in the center of my pencil rather than the very end. If you're finding that you're pressing too hard doing that, move your hand to the unsharpened end of the pencil. But this is where we're really going to start to build those darker values. As I get to where it's supposed to be darkest, I'll move my hand closer to the end of the pencil, to the tip of the pencil. That way I can press a little bit harder to start getting those darker values. Not trying to go through the paper, just starting to build those first initial layers. Soft pencil. I'm going to start somewhere in there. Again, start off with very light pressure. As you move to the dark side, start pressing a little bit harder. Like I said yesterday, 6B, ebony, we're not going to use that a whole lot. This is going to be down at the furthest end down here. Well, not the furthest end. We're going to put a little bit of ebony in there. But this is where it really starts to get those nice dark values. I'm holding the pencil like I would if I was just writing normally. So down towards the sharpened end. How do I always lose the ebony pencil? Oh, there it is. All right, ebony is going to be down at the very, very end. Okay, so I am just going to make press kind of hard, make this end pretty dark, very quickly lift my pencil up from the pressure, blend into where that 6B is, okay? Very quickly, like I said, ebony is going to be one that you use sparingly, so not much at all. We're not going to put it through the entire thing. Our last step in getting this rendered out is going to be using our blending stump. Now, make sure your blending stump is cleaned off. I showed you how to do that yesterday. Because we will start in the lightest section. So remember, we want to keep the taper on this. We want to keep the point on there. So hold it at an angle. Do not hold it straight up and down. Spin as you move your blending stump down the sandpaper. Then you're going to start over in the lightest area. I like to do circles, okay? So I like to do little circles because I know I did not shade like that. I'll go from lightest to darkest, especially in those lighter areas. You do have to press a little bit harder. As you get to those softer pencils, really don't have to press as hard. That graphite is soft enough that it'll blend a lot on its own. Another word for ebony is black. It's going to be very, very black. Use pressure whenever we're doing those darker pencils. Alright. If you got to clean up your edges a little bit, you can go in with an eraser. Since we blended with a blending stump and not our fingers, it should erase fairly well. If you stayed inside the lines and don't have to clean up anything, that's great. Here. Alright, so we're going to write a few things out on here for characteristics, tips, so that you guys can keep track of these. So smooth blended values. Smooth blended values. Gradual transitions. From light to dark. Use blending stumps. And controlled pressure. So that just means how hard you press down on your pencils. Controlled pressure. Those are the things we want written on there. All right. Next thing I'm going to give you, and I'm going to give you a copy of this, we are going to start on shading our actual forms. A parent yesterday watching you guys with the pretest, we need to figure out how to draw this, first of all. A lot of us struggle with that. Not a big deal. We just kind of got to go back to our perspective a little bit whenever we are doing that. So there's two there. So I'm giving you this so that you have it in front of you. I am going to have it up on the screen while we work. Give me that, please. Is that what I'm talking about? Okay, so before we even start drawing this out, there's a few things I want to point out with this. Cubes, other than drawing them, tend to be the easiest ones to shade because we do have corners that we stop at, okay? Very easy to see where we switch our values, okay? Now, there are some places, very subtle changes, light to dark, light to dark, light to dark, okay? Very subtle. But for the most part, it's easy to see where our values need to change, okay? One thing I do want you to be aware of, and what we are going to try to avoid, is really dark outlines, okay? There's not a really dark outline between our sides for this. It's the change in value that creates those lines, okay? So just be aware. We are going to be sketching with 4H so that we can try to keep from making those dark outlines. Something else you got to think about is direction of light. We're using this picture for our reference right now, but whenever we start doing our actual still life, you've got to think about which direction or directions your light's coming from, because that plays a big role on your highlights and your shadow directions. Some of you are going to have multiple light sources. The other thing that's going to be different whenever you draw your still life than what we're doing right now, you are going to be drawing a singular form at a time. We're going to go through and do each of these by themselves. When you draw your still life here in a couple days, you're going to have shadows that are created on these shapes from the other things in the still life. Okay?
How do you get like a reflected light? Like, on a, how does that work?
So if your light source is coming here, that light is bouncing off of the table over here and going right back onto that shape. I promise you it happens. You look like you don't believe me, but I promise it happens. Okay, so first challenge for us is going to be drawing this cube. Okay. It is going to, really difficult part is how am I going to do this? We'll do it like that. Okay. So, 4H, that is the one I want in your hand right now. Even when you're sketching, you are holding this pencil at the end. Because remember what I showed you yesterday is if you press too hard and then you try to erase and shade over, you're going to end up with those little ghost lines, okay? So do not press hard whenever you are sketching. So if we remember perspective, other than our horizon lines, we're not worried about a horizon line right now. What is the first line we should make?
The vertical line.
The vertical line. So this line that is closest to us, that's the first line I'm going to make on my piece of paper. Lightly. Do not press hard. Do not dent the paper. This is going to be a very, very light sketch. Now, We don't have vanishing points for this to go to. I mean, we could, but they'd be like way out here. Okay? What I want you to do is kind of use your pencil to measure angles. Okay, so you've got this picture right in front of you. You can hold this on that corner there, bring that over to get that same angle. Same thing at the bottom, get that angle drawn in. Then we know it's a vertical on the back. On the other side, hold your pencil down on that angle. Move it so it's the same angle. And we'll have our two sides there. Can you guys see that at all on the screen? What I drew? Okay, I'm gonna go a little bit darker so you guys can see it. Keep yours light. You're going to be using your pencils to measure angles all the time. So, what I like to do is I'll hold my pencil right on that line. Keep my pencil at that angle as I move over. And make that mark over there.
Mine looks like a book.
Always.
Wait, does this look like close enough?
What's our lightest pencil? So, we're going to be doing very similar things when we draw our still life, except you're going to be holding the pencil up in front of you and measuring angles rather than right down here on the paper.
Does that look right?
Yep, for your sides. So far. So let's make the top of this. All of you are going to be able to see the top of the cubes whenever you go to draw your still life, so we got to be able to do that. Same thing, measure that angle with your pencil. Have it right next to it. Stay at that same angle as you move to your drawing. Make that back edge. Hold it at the angle. Move the pencil over. Don't worry too much about the lines being super straight. Those angles are really important to begin with.
I don't think that bad.
So this is the first of 4 that you're going to end up drawing through this whole practice. They will improve. But using that pencil to get those angles, so important, so helpful. shading on the lightest side. Alright, so this left side is going to be our lightest side. That's where we're going to start. There is a very subtle change from light to dark here. So we are not going to use much pressure at all. It should be very similar to what we have going on up here. So start in the lightest area. I'm going to leave some of it. I'm going to leave a section of this just white. Okay? So I'm not going to go all the way up to that corner. But very, very light pressure as I move back to that back left corner of this cube. Very, very subtle change. Barely see mine up there. So it's a very light value change.
I think mine's too light. Because I can see yours. You got a brighter light. It's just not as dark.
So you can use pressure. So if you want it darker, press just a little bit harder, but still use the side of the pencil head. Now we're going to go to the top, and we're going to put just a pretty solid layer of our 4H all through the top, because none of this is as light as this over here, okay? So we're going to put a pretty solid layer of 4H on the top. I pressed a little bit harder on the top here with my 4H, just slightly. We can already see a difference between the side and the top there without there being an outline, which is our goal. We don't have outlines.
I think I went too dark.
Okay, now here's the deal. Not everything you are going to need to use a 4H4 to shade, okay? This shadow side, there is no need for us to use 4H over here, okay? It's too dark. We can skip that. We're going to start with 2H though, okay? But I'm going to finish this top part first, okay? So this top part, I do want to go a little bit darker over in this section. So very lightly, again, using the side of that pencil, rather 2H, yes. Always go in order. Start light, work your way darker. I'm not going to go over the entire thing. Stop about halfway through and fade that out a little bit. And remember, you can always go darker towards the end of this, all right? We can always add more values later. It's much more difficult to make things lighter again. Once I'm done with the top there for now, I might come back to it. I'm going to put a solid layer of 2H over this entire right side. So I'm still using my 2H. But this is the shadow side. It's going to be really dark. But I'm not trying to get that dark all at once. We gotta layer it. Still using 2H. now we got to start planning out. I know this needs to stay a little bit lighter here because we have some reflected light. So I am not going to go all the way to this bottom corner with my HB. This is where I kind of start working in the darker area first. And then I will gradually blend that out so it fades into my lighter color. Okay, so this is where you use that controlled pressure, pressing a little bit harder in the darker areas, letting off the pressure as we move into those lighter areas. Move to my 2B, do the same thing, but not go as close into my little reflected light as I did before. So the darker your pencil gets, the less you're going to use it as you move towards those lighter areas. Less and less space will get filled with those darker pencils. For B, again, not going to move quite as far. Staying in that really dark shadowed part for this one. Six B, use it barely at all. Just in that really dark upper portion up here. This is where you are controlling the pencil a little bit more. We're not holding it really far back because we need that control. Now, on mine, I have already decided I'm going to go back up to the top of this and work a little bit more because now I think it's too light compared to what I have there. Again, that's why we start off really light so that we can come back to it. It's a lot easier to make something darker later on than it is to lighten it up later on. Now, you'll notice I have not used ebony on this yet. We only use ebony for these cast shadows that we're going to create later on. Okay, so most of the time in the actual forms themselves, you're not going to use ebony unless another shape or another form is casting a shadow. All right. Did we use HB on the top? Yeah, we did, I think. I'm going to go back to 2B. Now, if the top of yours is dark enough, then that's fine. You don't have to go back to this step. Mine, I do not like how much lighter it is compared to that shadow side, so I'm going to put just a little bit more value here. It just depends on the pressure you were using. Okay, I'm happier with that. And this technique is gonna take practice. All right. Next thing, before we blend, we got one more step, and that is to create this cast shadow here. Now, I'm gonna do the same thing that I did when I was drawing my cube. I'm gonna use this line here. I'm gonna line up my pencil with my cast shadow line so that I can get that same angle. I'm going to draw that in. Use this, and I'm just using my 2B. Shadows are going to be dark, so I'm not super worried about to erase them later on. So, just get that kind of sketched in. Need to clean that up a little bit. Shouldn't have a curve. So sketch that shadow in first. Now is when we're going to use ebony. Okay? So if you notice on the picture, the darkest part of this is right underneath of our form. This is where you're going to be pressing pretty hard and very controlled with your ebony pencil. But as the shadow moves away from our form, it gets lighter. It gathers more light. Okay? Because the light is hitting the surface that it is sitting on. Okay? So dark right underneath of the shape. Let it fade as it moves away. So now we're using our ebony for the first time here. Getting that really nice dark shadow right underneath. Using lighter pressure as I move away from my shape. To fade that out. And then make sure your blending stump is cleaned off and ready to go. Then I'm going to blend a side at a time, lightest to darkest. Okay, so my left side over here is the lightest side, so I'm going to start blending there. Always move from light to dark. Last thing I'm going to blend is that shadow. Not going to blend where it needs to be really dark, so I don't want to take any of that off of there, but I did blend a little bit that faded part of the shadow. Alright. Next one. let's just take the time to draw out the rest of our shapes, and we'll see where we are. All right, cylinder. Now, cylinder. Couple things that you want to think about with this is we do have vertical lines, okay, but the tops and bottoms are curved, okay, but they are not perfect circles. If you notice on the drawings up here that are on the board, they are not perfect circles unless you are looking straight down onto a cylinder. It's gonna be an ellipse, more like an oval, okay? So whenever I start drawing these, again, use 4H. I'm going to use HB so you can see what I'm doing, okay? Please use 4H. So I'm going to start off by doing my verticals.
Do we do like tip or do we do side?
Just not much pressure. And if you notice, I am making these pretty big. On your still life, you're going to be drawing them bigger than this, okay? So, practice what you're going to have to do. Don't make these teeny tiny, okay? So, starting off with my verticals. Now I'm going to curve the bottom of this. So I'm not making a straight line. Gonna curve the top of it and make like an oval shape on the top for my cylinder.
I think I might need to make mine a little bigger. Where's the eraser at?
Now, if you want to get ahead of it a little bit, we can go ahead and draw out where our cast shadow is. You're going to be doing that on your still life. You'll draw where those are. Your shadows. Now, this is going to run into my other shadow, but that's okay. Yours might not. Should have scooted it over a little bit, I guess. So, drawn, not shaded. It does end up having a little bit of a curve up here. It doesn't end in like a corner. So it does have a curve up there. You just can't see mine because I run into my other shadow. So look at, you guys have this. Look at it. Cone. Now, with the cone, where'd you go? There it is. All right. The cones, I generally start with this bottom curve down here, okay? It's not a flat horizontal line, it is a curve. So I'm gonna start with that line first. That way I can find the center of it. All right, so start with that bottom line. It is a curve. It's not a big curve, but it is a curve. So I'm gonna find the center of that. I'm going to make a very light straight line up. From the top of that line I just made, I'm going to connect that to the bottom edges of that first curved line I made. And then we've got a cone. Shadow in. Look at your angles. It's going to be a triangular shadow coming off of there. So again, for my cone, made that bottom curve first, made a vertical line straight up from the center, and then connected those. Now, what's our sphere going to be?
Circle.
It's a circle. Yeah, it does not become a sphere until we actually shade it. Templates are up here in this black box if you would like one.
I'm pretty good at drawing circles.
If you're pretty good at drawing circles, then that's great.
Christian.
That's just going to be a circle. The shadow underneath is going to be an ellipse. Once you have those drawn, then put your stuff away.